Hello everyone, this is Code Ode. Welcome back to my new course. In this course, I want to teach you about command query responsibility segregation in Laravel. This is a software design principle, also known as CQRS, that separates or segregates data write operations into commands from data read operations into queries. So a command handles write operations such as create, update, and delete. And the usual naming for this is something like create post command, create user command. You can see that it deals with only one thing, right? Creating a post, creating a user, with the business rules involved with that particular operation, right? And then we have queries, which handle read operations such as fetching or retrieving data. That's the only thing that a query does. You can have something like get the latest post query, right? It only gets the latest post. Or you can have something like get latest post with user query. For every single post, it also loads the user benefits. So we have maintainability, right? Because we separated these two operations, we also get a better code structure. It makes it easier to test and safe for refactoring. That is because our commands only do one thing and our queries only do one thing, which makes the code much more readable, easier to test, and easier to refactor. Scalability. We can easily scale the reading or writing operation independently. For example, we can have a create post action which saves the data in the database, and then for the reading, for example, for the homepage of a blog platform, we are we want to show the latest 10 posts, right? But we do not want to take these posts from the database. We want to take them from the cache, right? Which basically makes the reading much more faster. We can scale the reading and writing however we want, which in turn improves performance, right? So the Laravel world has adapted to the CQRS pattern, which for commands we have actions, they encapsulate write operations, and for queries we have view models, they encapsulate the read operation and data presentation. So this is all for the theory. It's actually time to get to the real business and look at some actual code. So I have created an example project in Laravel 12 using the latest PHP version, which is PHP 8.4.0, which basically has the latest features. So let's check up dot and models, then post. I have created this post model, which has a relationship with the user model. So every post belongs to a user. Of course, database migrations. I have created a migration for this, and I've also created a post factory for generating post data. And you can see I'm using, let's check this out. I'm using SQLite for the database to keep things simple, right? Okay, so let's check routes, api.php. So I'm using Sanctum, which is pretty easy to install. All you have to run is the composer command to install this package. Please check the Laravel documentation. I have two routes, but in order to use this API file, which I have created, you have to go to Bootstrap, app.php, and then set in configuration this API file. So let's see. You have this post controller. Let's check it out. App HTTP controllers post controller. You can see that we have two methods. Index is returning the latest 10 posts with user information that we have stored in order to create posts. And for this, I have set up some tests. So test feature post test.php, and I'm using pest. Check the pest documentation. It's pretty easy to install it. You have to remove PHP unit and then simply install pest. And then I have this one test, and then this one, and then one that's a bit bigger. Basically, this is the whole starting the project, the example project for us that I want to use in order to showcase CQRS in Laravel. Now that we have our example code, we can start refactoring it to CQRS. So up controllers post controller.php, and we start off with this index method. You can see that it's taking data from database, so it's doing a read operation, and obviously we need to create a query, right? And you'll probably be thinking, well, I will just create a class, take this code from here and put it there. Well, not really, right? That's the most basic approach, and that is really the Laravel approach with a few models, where you put all your queries in a class. We'll go with a different approach, where we'll create a class, the query, which will act as a data container for whatever data our query needs, and the actual handler for our query, which will basically do the read operation, where we put our logic, right? So you can see that this query needs this information, which is basically the limit for how many posts we want. So in our app folder, let's create a new folder, query. Let's create our first query. This is going to look like this, get, and then we have to describe what this query does, and it should do just one thing. So get latest posts with user query.php. You can see how clear this is, right? PHP namespace app query. So class get latest posts with user query like this. Let's define our constructor. Construct like this, and we only have one data that our query needs, that limit. So public read only. This is latest PHP feature, read only. This is going to be an int, and this is going to be name limit, and by default it will be 10 like this, right? So this is like the shortcut syntax. I don't have to go right here and define this property. I can define it in my constructor like this. Okay, I have defined my query. Now let's define my handle. So let's create a new folder, handles. So get latest posts with user handle.php. So PHP namespace app query handles like this. So get like this. It should be handle. Okay, and we only have one method, public function handle like this, and this is going to take that query. So get latest posts with user query like this. So make sure to import this. Now let's go back to our post control, and let's take everything from here, cut it, and let's paste it here. Nice. And we want to return. Make sure to import the post model, and let's use query limit like this. Nice. Now that we have done all of this, we can go to our post controller, and we can auto inject that handle. That is because Laravel can inject our dependencies automatically for us. So get the latest posts with user handle like this. So handle. Now let's import this. Nice. So we have posts, handle, you get latest posts with user query like this, and we need to pass the limit, which is 10, and make sure to import this. Save it. Now let's go to the terminal, PHP artisan tests, to make sure our tests are still passing, and you can see that they are still passing. So we have refactored our index method to use a query. The next thing that we have to do is to refactor this store to actually use a command, because we are dealing with writing data. So now let's refactor our store method, and we'll basically go with the same approach. Let's create a new folder, commands, and let's create our first command, and this is going to be create post command.php. This is going to look like this, namespace app commands. So let's see, class create post command. Let's define our constructor. And let's define the data this command needs. Well, if we take a look, it needs a title, body, and a user ID. So public, read only, string, title, public, read only, string. It should be string, body, public, read only, int, user ID, like this. Now let's define our handles. So handles like this. The first one is gonna be create post handler.php. So PHP namespace app commands handlers like this. Class create post handler. Okay, so public function handle, it needs that command, create post command like this. Nice. And let's go back to our post control.php and let's take this one from here and let's paste it here. But instead of the command of the request, I want to replace this with command. So command title body, and then I want command user ID. This is pretty simple, but then you can have many other business rules. So business rule 1, business rule 2, and all these business rules should be related with this command that you are creating, like with creating a post, right? You can have one, for example, maybe you want the title to be unique or whatever you want, right? Usually commands do not return anything, right? In the CQRS world, the command should not return anything, or it should return just the ID of the data that it has created, right? But we are in the Laravel world, and if we want, we can do something like return post, right? Otherwise, if you are returning just the ID, which I think is still okay, you can then create a new query, something like get post by ID query, and then get the post data using that query. But let's go with this simple approach. So now that we have our handler, let's go to our post controller and let's inject this. So create post handler like this, import. So post, let's see, handle, new create post command. And of course we have to pass the data. So I want to use name argument. So request title, body, request body. This name argument feature is available from PHP 8.0, and then the user ID, request user ID like this. Make sure to import this command. Let's go to the script post handler and make sure to import the post model. Okay, and I think we are done. Open up your terminal and then simply say PHP artisan test like this. It should be out like this. Nice. So our tests are passing and we have successfully refactored these to uh, commands and queries. But this is like the most basic approach. The next thing that I want to do is to bring in the bus pattern in order to create a command bus and a query bus to make this code even simpler. So let's talk a bit about the bus design pattern. It's a software design pattern that acts like a central dispatcher for messages in the application. It takes a message, command, or query, finds the proper handler, and dispatches a message for its execution. It's like a postal office, right? It takes a message in, and then it finds the proper handler and dispatches the message, right? So you first write your letter. This is the command or the query. You drop it in the mailbox. This is like dispatching the message. Now the postal office comes in and takes your letter. It doesn't care about the content. It only cares about where to send it. And then it eventually finds the proper department, which in this case is the handler, and it delivers the letter to that handler. So basically, in few words, this is the explanation for the bus design pattern. Now let's see it in code. So let's start creating our command bus. So in app, I want to create a new folder, CQRS like this. The first thing that I want to do is to create an interface, command interface like this .php. So namespace out CQRS interface command interface, and that is all that I want for this. Open up commands, then this command, create post command, and let's implement that command interface. Nice. Now we need to create a new interface in CQRS. So command bus interface .php. So namespace app CQRS interface command bus like this. So command bus interface. Let's make sure this has the proper name. Yes, it has it. Okay, and we only need one method. So public function execute. This is gonna take command interface, which is gonna be our command. And I want to not specify the return type. We could say something like mixed, but let's leave it like this. So let's import this bad boy. Okay, and now we can create our command bus like this. So namespace app CQRS class command. So command bus implements command bus interface. Nice. So make sure to import this interface. Okay. And first thing first, I want to define a property where I'm going to map all the commands to their handlers. So private array map. It is going to be by default an empty array. So let's see. Now we have to implement that method. So function execute. It's going to take command interface like this. And let's import this interface. Okay. So first we check if we have a handler for this command. So this map command, and we use this syntax to get the class name. Otherwise, this is going to be null. So if there is no handler, throw new runtime exception. Failed to find the handler for the command, something like this. So I want to import this. Nice. Now if we have the handler, I want to create an object out of it. And for this, I want to say public function construct. That is because I want to use Laravel's container. So private read only container. I want to use this to create my handler object. Import, and I want to import this one. So this is the interface. We are not depending on concrete stuff, but on abstractions, right? So we can swap this container with another one if we want one that has this exact interface. So let's see. Now we can create an object. So this is going to be this container make, and we pass the handler. Now we have the object. Then we can say return handle, and we pass the command. Nice. So basically, this is our command bus. This is very general, and you can create a new class, something like post command bus, and just extend this class so that you have something more meaningful. Okay. Now let's map that command. So create post command like this. It's going to be mapped to create post handler like this. Make sure to import both classes. Okay. Now go to providers, app service provider, and in the register method, this app singleton. So every time I'm going to use this command bus interface. So like this, when I'm going to type in this in my methods, I want Laravel's container to actually create this command bus object. And it's going to do it just once because this is a singleton. So make sure to import everything. Nice. Now we can go http postcontroller.php and let's bring that command bus. So public function construct is going to be private read only command bus interface command bus like this. Make sure to import this. Nice. And right here for our store, we do not need this handler anymore. And we can simply say something like this command boss execute. And we pass that command object. It's gonna look in that map property and find its handler. Nice. Now let's test if this is working. So PHP artisan test. Let's see. So you can see that the tests are still passing and we have created our command bus. The next thing that we have to do is to create the query bus. So let's create a query bus. It's basically the same like our command bus. So let's start by creating query interface.php like this. So namespace app CQRS interface query interface like this. Now we can go to our query, to this query that we have created, get latest post with the user query, and say implements query interface like this. From here, okay, make sure to import it. Okay, back to CQRS. Let's create a new interface query bus interface.php. So interface query bus interface. Of course, make sure to provide a namespace. CQRS. This is going to have just one method, public function ask. So it's different from execute from our command bus interface. And this is going to be something like query interface. And it's going to take the query. And once again, we do not provide some return type because this is going to be mixed. So let's see this one. Nice. And now we can create our query bus. So let's see, I think we can copy this just to save some time. Rename this to query bus. So query bus, it's gonna implement that query bus interface. Make sure to import it. It's gonna take in the container. For the mapping, we want to map to this query, to its handler. So this one from here. Back to our, let's see, query bus. So we can get rid of this and this and this and this. So make sure to import this query and its handler. So this is gonna be query interface. So query, make sure to import it. This one. So like this. This is gonna be query. So query. So define handler for the query. And I think that is all that we need to do right here. Okay. Let's go back to our provider. And now we need to do this app singleton. This is gonna be query bus interface class. We map to that query bus class. And this is gonna be an object. It's gonna create this once, and that is all that it needs to do. So query bus interface. Make sure to type this properly. Nice. And now we can go to http postcontrol.php and let's print that query bus. So private read only query bus interface, query bus like this. Make sure to import this. We do not need this anymore. And this is gonna be this. Let's see, this query bus ask and just pass this object. So let's go back to our query bus and this is gonna be renamed from execute to ask like this. Nice. So back to our postcontrol.php, and I think we are done. Back to our terminal, PHP artisan test. Let's see. And you can see that this is still working. And we have done both our command bus and our query bus. Now, there are a few things that we can do. For example, we can, let's see, commands. Instead to actually use um, this model right here, we can actually create a repository and use that one so that we do not use models in our commands, and the same thing for our queries. We could do something like this if we want. So what best works with CQRS are repositories, right? Um, Using the repository pattern, but it is something that I'm not going to use for the purpose of this course. I want to keep things simple and just explain the very basics of CQRS. Of course, you can use a QA bus if you want. You can use it with middlewares and so much more, right? So now let's move to the final thing that I want to do. Now there's one more thing that I want to do, and that is improve the performance for this index method. Basically, the idea is that I want to show these posts in my homepage, and I'm taking this information from the database, and that is fine in the beginning when you don't have much traffic. But when the traffic increases, you're going to have a problem. This is going to become quite costly, and we need a better approach. And for this, I want to use a caching mechanism. So app, query, let's go right here. Firstly, I want to define the cache key. So this is going to be const, let's say cache key, like this. API posts latest. Now open up this handler for that query. And right here, I want to say something like cache, remember forever. Let's bring in that cache key. So it's going to be like this, cache key. And then we need to pass a callback. Now I want to use this syntax to have access to the query. And then let's take all this information, all this code, and paste it right here, and we are done, right? This is simple. If we have the cache, return what's in the cache. Otherwise, firstly, return this fresh data from the database. But we are not done. There's one more thing that we want to do. So we have this create post command and its handler. Now, when it comes to commands, they can have side effects. So I have created a post, and there can be side effects like forgetting the old cache for the latest post and things like that. And when it comes to CQRS, the standard approach for using side effects is to use for having side effects is to use events. But I'm not going to go that route. I want to keep things simple, and all I want to do is say cache, forget. Now I need that get latest posts with user query, and I need the cache key like this. So make sure to import this one, import the cache. So import the one with facade, this one. So let's go to this handler because we also need to import the cache. Nice. So this is the idea. When I'm creating a new post, I want to forget the old cache for the latest posts. And every time and the next time this is going to be hit, it's going to take the fresh data from the database. Otherwise, it's going to, if there is a cache, it's going to use that cache. And so we have improved the performance of this index method quite easily. And you can see how easy it is to scale your queries or your commands if you want. So let's give this a test. PHP artisan test. So it seems we have an error. Let's take a look to this handler. Of course, we have to return this. So return. So let's try this again. PHP artisan test. Nice. So you can see that all tests have passed. So basically, this is the final, uh, my final uh, improvement to our CQRS course. I have basically shown you the very gist of this design pattern. Now it's up to you to read more and learn more about this, expand it further however you want. See you next time.